equip your mind and heart to defend the truth of God through Christian apologetics. This is Reason for Truth. Reason for Truth. Now your host, Steve Garofalo.
Steve Garofalo, born before you were, Brooklyn, New York City. Raised in the Washington, D.C. area. My father's from Sicily, Italy. And I came here as an immigrant many moons ago. Worked for the Department of the Navy, worked on aircraft carriers and the like for the federal government as an electrical engineer. Grew up in a time where we loved America, God bless America, and one of my first, I went on 2 international missions trips, one to Romania, right after the beheading of Ceausescu, the leader there. I won't tell you a lot of stories about that, just to say that I did have a machine gun stuck in my face and was more than 30 hours traveling straight through 2 countries and got interrogated, and I can't believe I'm alive. But I did 2 trips, that and I did Chile, South America. But I had a lot of confidence because, you see, the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States went to my church because it was in McLean, Virginia. You can walk to the CIA headquarters, United States, where I went. So that's I got married, went to seminary, studied Christian apologetics with an emphasis on Islamic studies before 9/11. And so this is near and dear to my heart, perseverance through persecution. And what I want to challenge you all tonight with is, can you say, I am unto death a Christian? That's a tough statement to say. That's a tough statement to say. It's an easy statement to say. It's a tough statement to ingest, to marinate over, as my friend Derwin Gray would say. So am I unto death a Christian? Well, when I came to seminary, made friends with a gentleman from Africa, one of the countries within Africa. His name is Abdoulaye. And Abdoulaye said, now I'm not going to speak a lot about him for security reasons, but Abdoulaye was a devout Muslim. And he had memorized the Quran by the age of 14. The Quran is about the size of our New Testament. Okay. And Abdoulaye, Muslims think very different than American Christians do. We've had 200 years of no persecution, and now we're getting some persecution. So Abdoulaye got married, had a little baby, and he says to me, he said to me, my father has a fatwa for me, for his death. His father was married to 3 women, because you can do that in Islam. He has 3 wives and 18 children, 6 from each. Okay, and Abdoulaye said to me, Steve, Dr. Geisler told me, I need to he wants to start a ministry, witnessing to Muslims. So he says, I need to find chairman of the board. So what do? I become the chairman of his board for building bridges to the truth. And we start this ministry. So Abdoulaye says to me one day, I'm going home to see my father. I said, Abdoulaye, you're married with a child now. You're going to probably go with a one-way ticket. I don't think you're coming home. So he says, I don't care, Steve. If I die Christian, I die Christian. So Abdoulaye gets off the airplane. He's got 3 fatwas on him. And he's got men in the airport waiting to burn him, physically burn him, like with flames and fire. And Abdoulaye's friends heard he was coming to town, and what they did was they got into the back of a van. They pulled onto the runway. It's not like here. They grabbed Abdoulaye. They threw blankets over him. They threw him in the back of the van. And there, sure enough, were men in the airport waiting to burn Abdoulaye. But this is what Abdoulaye said to me, Steve, if I die for my faith, I die. I love my father. I'm going to see my father. Abdoulaye was unto death a Christian. Okay. Question, are you willing to seriously think about committing to the biblical mandate to say, unto death I am a Christian? That is the one question. If you leave today with nothing less, I want you to leave ingesting that on a serious level. 4 points to persevering through persecution, because that's the deal. See, persevering is the key here, okay? So, persevering through persecution. 4 points to this presentation. Number 1, we ought not be surprised why the world hates us. Number 2, persecution is a blessing. And my wife was very clear for me, you better develop that and let them know, what that means, because I don't see persecution, as being a blessing. Number 3, knowing what holds us back. And number 4, I want to challenge you at the end to really ingest saying, I am to death a Christian. Let's start off why we ought not be surprised why the world hates us. Okay? But let's first look at a really quick video on the persecuted church. I want to focus this presentation on persecution in general. There's domestic U.S. persecution. We don't face being beheaded by ISIS at this point in this country. So we face other kinds of persecution at this point, but we do face persecution. This past week, you saw the coach. Did anybody see that in Washington State? He got fired. Why? Because he prayed after his games. There was a girl, I think she was either in elementary school or middle school. She was asked to do a paper defending on the existence of God, and she failed when she wrote a paper on that God actually exists. She failed only because she believed God exists. By the way, attorneys got involved with that one because that goes against our Constitution. One of the most difficult truths to grasp for us as Christians is a simple fact that the world hates us. I was in seminary studying under a Levite Jewish Jew, Dr. Barry Leventhal. You may have heard of him. He's a Levite. Out of all the tribes in Israel, you heard of Leventhal, or you ever heard of a Jewish person with an L-E-V in it? They're from the Levite tribe. Well, Israel keeps track of every single Levite in the world. Remember what the role of the Levites were, the priests. They were like military guys who watched over the Ark of the Covenant. But we need not be... so Dr. Leventhal here, jumping ahead of myself, Dr. Leventhal was in class one day, and you're learning all this technical stuff, all this Bible, and Dr. Leventhal, the way he would do at times, just kind of dropped his head down, and he's in thought, and he says, I don't know why, but this is the longest stretch in history that Christians have lived with such peace, not persecuted. And this is going back, I graduated seminary in 2007, so you're probably going back to 2005. So don't be surprised. Why? Because Jesus made it clear that the world hates us. Despite the world saying they're tolerant, they're really not. And by the way, before I forget, because I'm not going to go into this too deeply, but I have a book here if anybody wants to get it. The proceeds, we do not go in income. It's a great book. I highly recommend you all get it. Right for you, but not for me, A Response to Moral Relativism. This book outlines the primary persecution that we're facing today is through sexual freedom. In the United States right now, sexual freedom is the God that people worship. They don't want to be told what they can do, what they can't do. And there's a chapter in here called Tolerance or Intolerance. But here's the deal. So notice how the world tells us, we're tolerant. You're the intolerant one. We're intolerant of everybody. Well, hold a second. You're tolerant of everybody except for me as a Christian and Christianity. Isn't that self-defeating? If they were so tolerant, why don't they tolerate us? Because they hate us. We're going to talk about that. Jesus said this. Jesus said this in John 15. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. We just saw the picture of Christ on the cross. If you belong to the world, it would love you just as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world. But I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. John 15, 18 to 27. I lived in a social fraternity, by the way, for 4 years. Made some great friends out of that. But I also saw some of the best the world has to come. And when you're in the world, see the world, you're in the club. You're in. See, when you're in the club, you're part of the club. When you're outside the world and you become a Christian in today's world, you kind of then become outside the club. See what I'm saying? See, when I was in the fraternity, brother, once I become a member of I went through they call it Hell Week, then you become a brother. All of a sudden you're a brother, and the younger guys coming up now, they're the pledges and the plebes, okay? Highly recommend you don't join a social fraternity. As much as you may want to evangelize, I would recommend you do that from afar, from the outside. Anyways, it's not that there's not lots of fun there, but you will be pressured to the nth degree to compromise everything that you've learned up to thus now to your life and what the Scripture and what your parents tells you is living right. Okay, don't be surprised when you're persecuted. 1 Peter says this, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. 1 Peter 4:12. And then what happens is the Greek word there for fiery trial actually means literally the among you burning. And there was a time in history, and I'm not going to get into it, but that was when you probably heard of them taking Christians and impaling them on poles and lining the ways to parties. So when you would come down the party, you would see just poles with Christians. They would cover them with pitch. And that was your welcome. Okay? And so here he is, but here's the connotation. This is what is the purpose of that in 1 Peter. This is the meaning of that, is that this intense fire is burning away the dross. Does anybody here know how they get metal? My kids now are like, I have a 7-year-old and I have twins that are about to turn 9 in March. And it's they're asking these questions like, how do we get metal and where does gold come from? Well, as you know, it comes out of the ground and they have to burn it and they smelt it, and so all the bad dross, the bad dirt and rock goes to the bottom, and all the good stuff, like let's say the steel or the silver, comes to the top. They do the same thing with gold. That's how they get it out. Sometimes you just don't get a chunk of really nice, grade A stainless steel. It's not like it'll come to the ground and you got kind of like a sink, right? If you want a stainless steel sink, you kind of got to get it out of the ground, out of the metal. So, but it's just burning, that intensified burning that purifies. But here's the picture. Here's another saying that wasn't in the textbook in seminary. Dr. Norman Geisler said this. He says, Christians are like tea. The best flavors come out when the water's the hottest. Here's the secret. Here's the secret that America hasn't learned from the Chinese or anybody through history. The liberals in general haven't figured this out. The more that you persecute Christians and Christianity, the more it grows. You see, when Christians are left to comfortable faith, we tend to get comfortable and we have atrophy that sets in, and we get comfortable and we get picked on by ISIS and everybody else. But when we're forced and our backs against a wall, so we have to depend on God, and God does show up. God is always showing up. He's omnipresent. But, He is there always to then move us ahead and grow Christianity. So my guess is you're going to start seeing churches overflowing in the future. It doesn't mean things are going to get better all of a sudden. It just means that people are going to get serious about their faith. That's where we're at in America right now, by the way. We've got, there's no such thing as the middle. A lot of people, I'm a moderate. There's no really, you either believe, this is either the Word of God, and it's up here, and I stand beneath it, or it's not. There's no such thing as a middle thing here. And that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing people, I'm a little older than you guys, and I'm starting to watch my friends, and to me, it's like watching the game and taking the scores. And I'm looking at it going, I wonder where this guy's going to fall. And sometimes you find people falling on this side when you thought they'd fall on this side. Sometimes you see people, you don't know what's going on inside a person's head and heart. And they'll all of a sudden depending on Christ. You'd never thought that in a million years. By the same token, you have some people you think, oh man, they're just walked with Christ their whole life. And all of a sudden they're going to the right. Let me tell you, I went to church, one of the most conservative churches in Washington, D.C. I got a friend of mine was chief of staff for Senator Dorgan. He was once one of the top 3 most powerful senators in the House, in the Senate, Congress, okay? And my friend, we're friends to this day, and I watched him go from kind of center-right, and then he went to Georgetown Law. And he graduated top 7% in Georgetown Law. This is the way it works when I call him and said, hey, what are you going to do? He says, when you graduate top 7% of Georgetown Law, Washington, D.C., Georgetown Law School, okay, Washington, D.C., okay, I said it 6 times. When you do that, he says, you don't put out applications. You basically go to the law school that you want to, and you tell them whatever you want to make between $100,000 and $300,000. He goes, my job now is to spend $2,000 a week taking people to lunch as a lobbyist. Now, I watched my friend, and he told me what happened when he went to law school and how they deprogrammed him. My last conversation I had with my friend, this is a guy who grew up in the church, and we did life together for 10 years, and he's arguing with me at that time that he believes that Philadelphia should cancel an 80-year-old relationship they had with the Boy Scouts because they wouldn't allow gay scout leaders in. Now, in your generation, I know you guys see things differently than the older generation. But at the end of the day, his position as a Christian leader should be a lot more solid than that. But my point is this: you can't listen. You're going one way or the other. There's no such thing as constant. You know what I mean? The only constant is change. In other words, you're either moving away from God or you're moving towards God. Okay. So the bottom line is we just talk about this fiery trial in 1 Peter 1, 6 and 7. But here's the deal. See, Peter's readers were astonished at their suffering. He said it kind of took them off guard. They didn't expect that. And what Peter was speaking, and by the way, we're no different than Peter's followers, okay? Because think about it. We all grew up in the church. I grew up in the church. When I was a young man, that was the law of the land. I mean, the Bible was the law of the land. And all of a sudden, we're just astonished. We feel like we woke up one day and, man, look what's going on over here. I'm being persecuted. But Peter stressed mental readiness. And this is what I want to instill in you. Again, if we walk away with nothing more tonight, I want us to be able to say, am I unto death a Christian? And I want to give you some meat on those bones for mental readiness. The best thing you can do as you get older and you move out of your parents' house and you go to live on your own is to be in this every morning. You open your day with this in prayer, and don't give it a once five over. Try to create the discipline of being in that, and that will carry you through. So why does the world hate us? Well, number one, we're different. We're different than the world. Number two, we bear Christ's name. And number three, well, what we stand for, us, exposes their sin. Okay? Number one, we're different. The world hates us because we're different. And John 15:19 says this, if you were in the world would love you its own, but because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. John 15:19. We're different. If we fit the world's ID, the MO, listen, we would be in the club. There is Emily Brooker, which was in one of my classes. It's not in this particular presentation. I have a video on it. Emily Brooker went off to college. She was asked as a college assignment to have a homosexual experience, okay? Then to write a paper on it. So she went to her professor and asked, can I do something else that kind of goes against my values? She's a believer. She plugged her nose. She didn't have the act, but she did the paper. Then she was about to graduate. She was asked by another professor to lobby her senators for gay adoption. And when she refused to do so, they brought her up into the dean's office, I guess, or the department head's office, and all the department heads got around, and they denied her parents being there. They denied her counsel. They denied her anybody be with her. And they interrogated her for about 2.5, 3 hours. And they did this. They took a piece of paper and they slid it across the table. Sign the paper. Sign the paper. You're free. Graduate. The whole deal. You know what was on the paper? She had to admit on paper that her views of Christianity, or the Christian view, her views were wrong, intolerant, and that she was going to submit to this new sexual orientation training to help correct her thinking. Okay? We're down south here. Coming from the Washington, D.C. area, I had a friend named Lisa. This is going back 20 years. I remember Lisa said to me, Steve, there's one thing I like about the North. I said, Lisa, what's that one thing? She says, if you're a Christian, it means you're a Christian. I got a kick out of that. Now, I have to admit, because if you go up north, there's quite a bit of hostility against Christianity. But having said that, I think that you're starting to see the pressure and the persecution come down here, okay? So when your neighbor, your family, when your friend in school is kind of persecuting, it's just plainly simply because you're different. We bear Christ's name, number two. The world hates us because we represent Jesus. We represent him publicly and purposely, identifying with Jesus. They hate him, so they hate us. My friend, when I started working, graduated from college, I was traveling. I love Texas. I love Houston and Dallas. And my buddy Jason said, yeah, I was getting it. You know, you fill your company car up. He says, I got out, and I saw this girl. She had this big cross. And I looked at her and I said, hey, do you have to know Jason? He goes, that Declaration or Proclamation? And she smiled and she goes, I never thought about that. I guess it's Declaration. She was honest. So here's the point. How much is of what, for us, how much is Christianity declaration versus proclamation, okay? You hear my different accents. Just, I'm confused. You're born in New York, raised in D.C., you live down here for 16 years. It's all mixed up. I'm messed up. Say, now if I really think that back in my childhood, I might say, start speaking Italian or something, but we won't do that today. So while Jesus' disciples didn't understand this, they did later on. This is the same as true. See, his disciples, when Jesus' disciples, you ever read how they were kind of like, what do you mean by that? Jesus would speak of his death, his impending death or crucifixion, and they didn't get it. Well, we're kind of that same place. We're scratching our heads going, what's going on over here? It's taken us by surprise. Remember the Oregon shooter? Did anybody here read the story of the Oregon shooter? This is only a few weeks ago. This is just in October. CNN. In one classroom, Chris Harper Mercer singled out Christian students when he witnesses to murder. And witness Anastasia Boylan said this to CNN. "What is your stated religion?" Chris asked. "If Christian," he said, "good, because if you're a Christian, you're going to see God in about 1 minute." Here's another account, NBC. Another account came from Autumn Vicari. Her brother JJ witnessed in the room, and this is what he said. Vicari said, "At one point, the shooter told people to stand up before asking whether they are Christian or not. Vicari's brother told her that anyone who responded yes was shot in the head. If they said other or didn't answer, they were shot elsewhere in the body, usually in the leg." Why? Why were you shot in the head and not the leg? Well, we bear his name. Number 3, the world hates us because we expose their sin. Listen, I lived, 4 years at a fraternity house. I go to a neighborhood party in my own neighborhood, and these people are partaking in alcoholic beverages, and I'm not judging them for that. I'm there to just enjoy the neighbors and be friendly. But they judge me. You know why? I'm an ordained minister. I have to, everything that I do is under a microscope. And so therefore, I have to be above reproach. But it's counted against me in my neighborhood because they feel like they have to put a collar on or something, or, the pastoral identification when they're next to me, I guess. I don't feel that way about them. But you see, the bottom line is, and these are people with more Christian decorations in their house than I have in mine. I mean, they got pictures and paintings and everything. Okay? But why? Because by just certain times, the way we act rightly, when we follow this as our moral guideline, by just the way you act, it may be the things you say, it may be what you stand for that exposes their sin. Listen, you don't have to be a spotlight. You could be a flashlight, and just by walking through the room, what do you see? If there's cockroaches there, you expose them. In omission, see, a lot of times we expose their sin through omission. When I was in my fraternity, Patrick Lacey was the president. I was the vice president at one point in my fraternity. Pat came up to me and said, Steve, I don't understand you. He says, one half of you is the most moral, righteous, honest, upstanding, upright guy. I've never seen anybody. And the other half of you, you're like the wild party, the party animal. Right? Here's the point of that. I was wrestling with God. I would submit, don't go there. Trust me. I was very blessed that the Lord pulled me out of a very particularly life-altering situation in those 4 years. But here's the deal. He was looking at the light and the dark mixed in. When we become light, he's looking at the light going, what the heck? Because we're exposing the sin, okay? So when there's a school policy that says you can't wear a shirt that says Jesus on it, or work policy, or that goes against your biblical values, or simply living rightly, we're exposing their sin. When someone gives you a cold shoulder because you're in the public school, because you're a Christian, it's because we're exposing the sin. Take heart, we're not alone. We're not alone. Christ is there with us. Now, here's number 2. So we looked at why we ought not be surprised. Number 2 is persecution is a blessing, okay? And let me explain this, because I know what you're thinking. Okay, oh my gosh, persecution really is a blessing. Sermon on the Mount. Anybody here read the Sermon on the Mount? One thing we learn in seminary is repetition. You learn about when things are said in the Bible, why they're said. You see a lot of times the bookend. What's important is how a book opens, how it closes. Well, when Jesus says something, right? Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? Jesus, you sound like a broken record. Okay? Well, why does he keep asking the question? Why do you guys think? Someone want to take a shot at that? Why is Jesus asking 3 times? Why? It could be. That's a great analogy. I didn't even think about that. Let me put it this way. When your mother and your father say, hey, listen, come here, and they tell you something. Then they say, come here, and they tell you again. And they say, come here, tell me again. Why is that? Maybe we'll let Mom take a shot at it. Anyone want to take a shot? Or Mom, you want to take a shot? Why is it that we repeat as parents? Because it's important. Exactly. So when you see something repeated, it's not because they're being a nag. And in the Bible, when you see something that's repeated, it's very important. This is Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus says twice, listen, not only does he say it twice in the same chapter, he says it in verses 10 and then verses 11. Now listen, blessed are those who are persecuted. Blessed. All right, I just got hung. I'm blessed. I just got beat. I'm blessed. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. Matthew 5:11 then. Listen. Blessed, again, blessed are you when others revile you or persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Matthew 5:11. He's saying this because it's important. And he wants you to understand that you are blessed in persecution. Now, my wife, again, told me I better develop that. So just stand with me. Hang in there with me. Peter and James encourage us to see suffering, persecution, and trials as a blessing. Now, Peter encourages suffering readers, and he says this, 1 Peter 3:14, but even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be, what? Blessed. James teaches the same to his flock, and this is what he says in James 1:12. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. Now here's the problem. The American mindset contains confusion as to the meaning of the word blessing, okay, or blessings. Let me explain. We think that blessings are something that are pleasant, right? Right? This is my favorite Southern term. Bless your heart. But you see, even that means a couple things. I had to learn that. I got down here and was blessing my heart. These are nicest people. I'm thinking, oh, hold on a second. Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes I really look like a, well, Yiddish word would be schmuck, right? We understand that. Okay, which means you're kind of like a stupid. Anyways, so the challenge of the American mindset is condition us to think that every time we hear a blessing, it's bless your heart. It's listen, you've been blessed with a new bicycle, iPhone. I mean, would you think you're blessed if your parents just came up and said, man, you're a great daughter. Here, take the iPhone. You got to have one. Would you feel blessed? Yeah, I would too. Joy versus happiness. Anybody can tell me what the difference between joy versus happiness is? I love it. I remember when I first kind of discovered that. It's interesting, yeah. Happiness is like when my kids get a Lego toy. Or when I get a Lego toy, because I like Legos. But my son is more patient with them. But it's kind of like when I get a new Bose speaker, isn't that cool? I mean, I got to admit to you, I was happy. But blessed is when I'm being persecuted and I use this thing to glorify God. Where I'm under pressure, okay? I was in Romania, remember? Had these giant guards, machine guns in my face. I was crazy as in my 20s, which is older for you guys, but it's younger for me. And I get there and I'm like, and I'm just going to, I've got the video camera. I go, hey, my buddy's went there to run a print shop, printing Christian literature. And I go, Big Brother's watching. And all of a sudden I'm like looking through the viewfinder and I see, what he got a fly on him? He's doing this. So finally I cut the camera. He goes, he says, my phones are tapped in here. I'm being watched. Even though Ceausescu had been beheaded, the KGB is still alive and well. Matter of fact, in Belarus, which is just south of Russia, kind of north of Poland, they still actually, their KGB is still called the KGB. So don't think that stuff's gone away. So blessings are not always pleasant, but there's happiness versus joy. Okay, Paul, Peter, and James challenge us what the Bible means by blessed and how persecution means blessing. In part, the confusion is brought on by the meaning of the word blessing. See, different Bibles, if you've got the King James, the New King James, the NIV, the ESV, the Stevie G. There was no Stevie G version. All right, here's what it says. Okay, actually, come on. There you go. All right. So if you look at one Bible, they may say the word blessed. You read another Bible, it says happy. Read another Bible, that same word is fortunate. Fortunate is not being blessed. You know who uses, I think, happy and fortunate? Joel Osteen. Your best day yet. Send a check for $5,000. You'll be blessed today. No, he'll be happy. You'll be poor. Okay? Just giving you a heads up. Giving you a heads up. All of this holds a measure of truth, but being blessed is kind of a combination of all of them. So the Greek word for blessing is makarios, or as I like to say, makareos, because I think he can do a dance or something, makareos or something. You know what I'm saying? All right. It's kind of like what's the last book of the Old Testament? I'm Italian. We call it Malachi. Okay. So I says, I'm ready for some Gucci's. So, all right. But that would be incorrect. All right.
Want more Reason for Truth? Make an online gift at reasonfortruth.org. Always be ready to give an effective answer for the good news living inside you. This is Reason for Truth.